So Mohan is a CTO at the Hive, which is accelerator here in Palo Alto. And when I was thinking about the panel, it came to me immediately, there is no better person than Mohan to talk about some of these issues, because he's acting CTO for many of these startups, and he helps essentially groom them and find replacement for himself. So he can tell more about the Hive. And
thanks for having me here. Thank you. My name is Mohan Reddy. I'm the CTO of the Hive. Personally, a little bit about myself. So I'm an engineer. So I still code on a daily basis in production level code. And I brag about it because when you're a CTO or an architect, a lot of people say, oh, I don't write production level code, right? And that's not, once an engineer, you're always an engineer. And I strongly believe in that, right? So when you are a leader, you have to lead in the front. So I have background I had my undergrad in biomedical engineering, master's electrical, and then I went on, did MBA and got a degree in computational finance. That's because of my interest in math and primarily, right? So what I really love and enjoy is really taking out meaning of data, right? So there's data everywhere, there's ubiquity of data, and we are seeing that a lot these days, right? So all the companies are everywhere around, you'll see so much of hype about AI and data, and you see so many startups springing from it. But primarily, I've worked a lot in various companies in scaling the environment, large-scale data processing, machine learning, decision processing, and worked on systems long before cloud existed. So, before I came to Hive, I was at Zynga, and I was leading the backend teams there, scaling to few hundreds of millions of users, right? And having few terabytes of data processed on a daily basis. So coming to the Hive, so Hive is actually, we're not an accelerator, we're not an incubator. What we are is we are a company co-creation studio. Right? So when you really look at how generally Silicon Valley are, the VCs or the startup ecosystem is organized, is at the bottom you'll see is the accelerators and the incubators. This is where they have batches of people that would come in, and primarily a lot of these are real estate play, right? So you have applications, people would come in, you choose some of them based on the merit, and they have certain time that they spend over there, get all the mentorship, and then they subsequently go to and raise the funds. And what used to happen is, and then you have the investors, right? Series A, B, C, growth, and then IPO. Most of these startups, these incubators or the accelerators, they did very well during, app boom and revolution, because they're really good for hey, you are two entrepreneurs and a dog, you have a good idea, and that was very good, you started, but it was great at that time. But then slowly after 2007, you start seeing a huge increase in startup mortality, right? Because that none of these companies which were at that stage, they either die or they close the shop because they were not able to raise the money, right? And even though there were some great ideas as well, but then it didn't succeed. So that Hive started in 2012, with the premise that we want to bridge that gap, right, from that stage of these companies at the seed stage to the next round of financing. What does it take to decrease this startup mortality, with all these founders. And so when we started out first, we were very thematic. All we wanted was our central theme was, hey, we are going to build companies which leverage data, right? So we were very particular that, hey, we are not going to build another horizontal platform, right? Platforms good for big companies like Google and Facebook and others, and platforms is a hard sell. So we focused on applications. And at that time, people said, hey, you guys are very narrowly focused. But instead, wait and watch, because that's what's going to drive everything. And we're seeing it right now. It's everywhere. So what we do is we have our modus operandi is threefold, right? So we either fund very early stage companies, like two entrepreneurs and a dog, the situation, but it's thematically they have to be aligned to us, right? So we are very thematic, and I'll explain in a bit about what our themes are basically. And it's okay if the idea is not well formed, right? And we will help them, refine those ideas. So that's one model. The second model is, because we are a team of entrepreneurs, people who have operated companies before, and so instead of waiting for entrepreneurs, we actually start companies ourselves. And the third model is sometimes they have large corporations, where there's no dearth of smart people in large corporations, but it's just that, just the weight of these companies, and in order for you to have any idea, you have to run it like a startup, and startup takes a whole different, mechanism for you to be successful, right? So the big companies, just by the sheer weight, they just kill these ideas. And so we do start companies with large corporations. So in all the three models, the way we work is, they have to be thematically aligned, right? So our theme is, anything that leverages AI and data, but that means everything under the sun these days, right? So then very focused on the theme. So we do not do any consumer applications or companies. So everything that we do is B2B. And in the thematic areas is, we look at IoT, and very specifically industrial and commercial IoT, right? Not consumer, because in order for you to be successful in consumer IoT, you have to own the channel, like Samsung, Google's, and them. Then you'll be successful in wearables, and in the fickle wearables market, it's hard. And then we are very closely, we look at enterprise and enterprise applications. So with the changing, with the compute becoming cheaper, but also changing demographic and the dynamics, there's a need for a complete overhaul and a complete rethinking of the existing enterprise applications. And so we actually focus quite a bit, what is it that you can go and disrupt in supply chain management, in logistics, in service and support, right? In really going pretty deep into this and see how does AI and data actually help, rethink through this whole thing. What are those applications, right? Just to give you guys an example, even in IoT. So what's happening right now is there's this whole concept of all these large companies, they stopped selling the major equipment, right? So from a capital expenditure model, things are moving into OpEx, meaning they sell machine as a service. Now, when I say machine, it's groups of machines, all together, right? It could be a Rolls-Royce, selling the jet engine, or a GE selling a turbine. And there's a lot of components to it, right? So when you're selling this as a service, you have to have a lot of SLAs associated with it. You got to have this system up and running continuously. That means you have to proactively monitor this. And so how do you keep track of this asset and asset performance monitoring? That's there's a whole so now you have to really get into the weeds of these sensors. And then as I told you, these are groups of machines. So what will happen is, how do you monetize? How do you start paying for each one of them? So then you should start thinking about a whole new revenue management options out here. And so this is how you start thinking through this whole thing. That's how we start thinking and developing these ideas. So we're slowly looking into, we're big in security and blockchain, and we're slowly getting into healthcare. But in all the three, what happens is, someone comes and pitches the idea or something that we have it. We go through a vigorous, good 2 to 4 months of validation process. So we tap into our network, we tap into a group of advisors, go talk through this and refine these ideas. So end of this 2 to 4 month cycle, what we really want is, one, hey, you are actually solving a problem, right? There is a problem, and so this is not a lab project or this is not a feature, right? Because if it's a lab project or a feature, it's a recipe for failure, right? It does not work. And the second thing is, what is the total market value, right? If the total market value is not above $1 billion, we do not invest. The reason is because, as a startup, you don't capture the entire 2 billion, right? You only capture, if you're good, you'll capture 5% of the market, right? 5 to 10% of that. And so if your total, your value of your company is not in hundreds of millions of dollars, it'll become like a lifestyle business, and nobody will invest in these companies in the future, right? So we have to think through all of that, and so we think through that aspects of it, and shoot 90% of our ideas down, right? Or people who come, and only 10% sometimes, so we invest. So we invest anywhere between 1.5 to $2 million at the seed fund, and the Hive, acts very close, as one of the co-founders of these companies. So we work very closely with the entrepreneurs and particularly myself, so I'm usually the acting CTO, first engineer, or their mentor, guide, or whatever it takes. And my other colleagues, they look at, help at the product side and go to market and others. So we really work very closely with these companies so that our goal is, in the next 15 to 18 months,